What's up, y'all's cousin Chet? Ooh, that was loud. Bang! Bang! Boogie! Happy 4th of July, everybody. Welcome to freedom!
What an explosive intro. How fitting.
Bringing the fireworks, baby. We're bringing the fireworks. So, what's up, everybody? It's Cousin Chet. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for the subscribes, comments, and all the love. Appreciate everybody. 10,000% and even a little more. And since July 4th is going to be here, our theme topic, catalyst for discussion, will be freedom. So what's up, Dillion? Good to see you again. Back in Gilligan's Island with Good Citizen. Do you want to say hi, Good Citizen? He waved. Wave back. You know how you can wave back? Comment, like, subscribe. That's how you let Good Citizen know that you appreciate the content. So today's topic is freedom. What is freedom? Well, according to the dictionary on the Google search, which I don't even know what dictionary that is, definitions from Oxford Languages. So probably from like the Oxford Dictionary. And it says freedom is a noun. Freedom is a noun that means the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. That is freedom. Fireworks already. So, the reason why we celebrate freedom on July 4th is because July 4th, 1776, a group of unfree individuals decided that they wanted freedom from their current government. And they created the Declaration of Independence. And they all sat down and decided that they wanted to be free of the restraints, hindrances, and otherwise oppression of the English crown. For most of history, governments and civilizations have been run by usually one person. It's usually the person that can either kick everybody at his ass or his daddy did. And he's in charge until somebody kicks his ass. That's pretty much how it's been in history. And
the jungle.
And whoever decides that they're going to kick everybody's ass, they get to make the rules. So that's been most of human history. And for most of human history, you were subject to that person. Whether it was Genghis Khan or the pharaohs of Egypt or like, you know, in the Middle East, I'm trying to think, they weren't pharaohs. They're not necessarily kings or queens, but the rulers of the world, right? It doesn't matter. The dynasties of China, the empires of Japan, the warlords of the world, it doesn't matter. The world society was basically run on the guy who can kick everybody's ass gets to make the rules, and you either follow the rules or he kicks your ass.
And it was somewhere in one of those tabs. It might have been the one. I think it was the timeline. It makes a point of we got this article pulled up called "The Timeline of Human Rights," and essentially it makes the case that freedoms and rights for most of human history have been defined by the group that you are associated with. So if you are a Jew, you have certain rights as a Jew. If you're in this family, you have certain rights within the family. And
well, whatever your culture or whatever your organizing of your community was, right?
And so, like, Genghis or Alexander or Caesar or any of those conquerors, as long as you're outside of the group, your rights don't matter. But once you've come in and you decimate and you overwhelm and you stall and you conquer a place and you take it over, then you're left with the conundrum of, okay, now that we own this place, are we just eradicating everything else like a rival anthill
Mm-hmm.
and then replacing it with our genetic spawn, or are we taking these people over and rewriting the rules?
Mm-hmm. But to me, that just if Genghis comes in, he says these are the rules. That's not freedom to me.
Mm.
You know what I mean? If the even in the Jewish context, they're like, here are the rules. That's not freedom, because remember, freedom is without hindrance or restraint. Now, we'll get into this, but you know, different societies have to make that balance, right? Oftentimes, it's seen as a balance between freedom and civil freedom and safety, right?
Well,
So like pure freedom could, for a lot of people, the idea would be anarchy. Anarchy's dangerous. If everybody gets to do whatever the fuck they want to do, you're not safe, and so we find that balance. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole yet.
I just say that to say, like, this modern idea of universal freedom, this idea of, well, there's human rights.
Yeah.
There is being a person with some degree of conscious agency automatically lends you, like, it entitles you to these.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very new idea. That's a very new invention.
Well, and the Declaration of Independence was kind of a new idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because most people, they didn't come up with some nice document to send to their boss and say, "Hey, here's my grievance," and whatever, whatever, whatever. Like, that was new, and the idea of that individual freedom, right? Because for most people don't recognize that for most Europeans, we were subjects to the crown, which meant the crown owned us, right? So where a lot of people will be like, white people, white people, white people. The fact of the matter is white people had to fight for their freedom too. It just so happens we had to fight other white people, but and most people outside of like white culture, especially American white culture, you may not realize that your hillbillies, your Appalachians, your rednecks, and all those, they were the ones that were like, yeah, I'm not putting up with this. I'm going to fight for freedom. You know what I'm saying? And as much as we want to like be derogatory against some of those people at times, I think it's important to recognize that without that, you don't create a space for women's suffrage. You don't create a space for inalienable rights, which is the Bill of Rights, which I'm going to get to. But first, I want to go back to Declaration of Independence, please. Because it is the celebration of July 4th is chosen on this date because July 4th, 1776 is the day that a group of people in the colonies of the stolen land, I get it, right? But they made this unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. And it's really a beautiful document. So I'm going to actually go ahead and read it right now. If Good Citizen can get it and leave it alone. I wanted to read it, bro. Thank you. Because it really is a beautiful document. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. You might want to read a book to really digest this, because this is not
basically what he's saying.
This isn't basic English. This is
basically what he's saying, though, is, it's time we stood up for ourselves. We've been pushed and pushed and pushed, and we're tired of resetting the goalposts.
Yep. And what he's saying is, here is our declaration. We feel that it's respectful, And here's part of it. We will respectfully are going to tell you. We're not just going to start throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails. No, we're going to respectively tell you that we've had enough.
We've been pushed.
And it goes on to say, and I love I make fun of the some people can't quite comprehend this language but it's beautiful. Like, to me, this shit is poetic. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them as to them shall most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, that to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for the future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove these, let facts be submitted to a candid world. I'm not going to go ahead and continue on to the specifics of that. I do highly recommend that you read it so that you can understand this very, very impactful document in the course of human history, because this document is the one that becomes the catalyst for the Bill of Rights in our Constitution. This document becomes the catalyst for a spread of constitutional republics around the world. Again, we're talking about a world that's pretty much warlords and monarchs, right? You have very few, if any, truly free societies. And even then, and I will admit that even in July 4th, 1776, when it says all men are created equal, they're talking about like white property owners. That's, their definition of men at the time isn't just any person, right? It's very specific, male, sexually, and it is, and for them, gender and sex at that time, there was no distinction. A person with a penis was a man. And but it was it was also like a common man, because before this, the document before this that really was a catalyst of freedom was the Magna Carta, which means the Great Letter. So the Magna Carta was written in like 1215, and it was one of the original documents that kind of set forth that a king had limits, right? That the king didn't have complete freedom to do as he would with his subjects. Now, again, we're talking about, these are property owners, these are the landed gents of the medieval ages in England, and but they're saying, look, we're tired of these kings, and a new king comes in and he gets to make whatever rules. They would do things like one of the most egregious things that I remember hearing about the King of England doing was It was like in the movie Braveheart, right? They give an example of this where they're taking over Scotland, right? And in the process of taking over Scotland, one of the things they want to do is they want to breed the Scots out. So when a Scottish person got married, instead of him getting to take his wife's virginity that night, one of the king's soldiers got to do it, right? If the and you know if that's not an
The
egregious
local lord or noble. But yes,
somebody representing the
essentially,
king,
yeah, yeah.
right? It wasn't the husband that just married her, right? I mean,
Wasn't even the king's soldiers though. It was the king's middle managers.
right. Um, and so I mean, but regardless of who it
Yeah,
is, some
yeah.
representative of the king, right?
It's even
It is
more
it's
egregious.
late. It's basically the king because that in that day and age, that's how they saw it. These people were subjects of the king, representing the king. So it was the king that was taking
It's
the
one of
wife.
those things that's it's almost more grotesque and egregious than a Genghis Khan scenario because it's bureaucratized.
Mm-hmm.
It's bureaucratized outbreeding.
Yeah. Um, and so especially looking at and look this right now what I'm talking about is like my basic history lesson that I also received as the March to Freedom. I recognize that there may have been some governments out there that had some forms of freedom or not, and that's where we go back to your point earlier that different communities decided what freedom was for them. Um, but in the United States, that freedom became, excuse me, the Magna Carta was like it was like one of the original documents. There are some other documents, so like the U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights. Scroll that up for me, good citizen. They would list the very first document as a 539 BC document. Is it a document?
It's a
It's
it's a cylinder with engravings on it.
okay. So it's a document. It may not
Yeah,
be in our
it's a
current
yeah.
form of like ink on paper, but so in 539 BC, Cyrus the Great, who took over the city of Babylon, freed slaves there, and declared at that time, and this is kind of cool, that people should have the choice of their freedom. And according to the USIDHR, this event is considered by many to be the world's first charter in human rights history. So, kind of like the first codification of people have some rights, right? And then, you know, but in history, and hey, if we're wrong, if my little research is wrong or whatever, help me out. Are there other documents of freedom before the Magna Carta in 1215? And after Cyrus, the cylinder of Cyrus, um, that kind of establish what freedom is supposed to be. And I think the freedom of religion one is important because to me, freedom of religion is the freedom to think.
Hmm.
Right, it's the freedom to have my own thoughts.
Well, it's a master stroke from Cyrus. Like I believe it's Talmudic rabbis in rabbinical in Talmudic rabbinical literature. Like Cyrus the Great is greatly esteemed in scholarly Jewish uh, thought. Like you know what I mean?
Because they may
When
have been the slaves that were freed.
that they were
That was the
yeah
Jew.
canonically according to the Tanakh and the Torah, like it is Cyrus the Great who essentially decides to release the Jews from Babylon, and
But a question: are there other religions that are also slaves there? Like like in the United States, slavery was like based on race, and so like you pretty much like it was black people that were enslaved, right? You didn't
well,
have like there weren't a lot of white people on the plantation that were considered slaves.
regardless of the historicity of it, the sort of collective memory that you find in Judaism, like when you read the Book of Daniel,
Yeah,
or when you read like from Daniel on to Ezekiel, when you read like the Old Testament and those like that era of time where it's like, yeah, Israel's decimated by Nebuchadnezzar, and then the Jews are in Babylon, and then they come back to the land. The Jewish memory of the time spent under destitution in Babylon, they recall this as there was like the memory of Babylon is one of, okay, well, the Babylonians were at least pragmatic enough to have a merit based system.
Mm-hmm.
So the cleverest of the Jews, even though the Jews were a conquered people, Daniel rises to the ranks. He's one of the counselors of the king of Babylon.
That's the one that has the dreams.
Mm-hmm. And then, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get stuffed in an oven and they don't die. Anyways, like, point is there's this sentiment of, okay, the Babylonians oppressed us, they were conquerors, but they ran on a merit-based system that allowed the high-achieving Jews to rise up in the ranks to the point where they were able to negotiate for their own freedom.
Right.
And I think what I was saying before, it's kind of a masterstroke. Like the fact that not only do the Jews have this sort of memory of Cyrus the Great being a great leader and sort of whatever the word you want to use for it.
He was a magnanimous leader. He was. Go ahead.
But this physical,
great among men.
This physical document, this cylinder,
right,
seems to bear that out in a funny way, because that's a masterstroke to say, okay, you're our slaves, we beat you, you do what we say, but as long as you follow our rules and you do what we say, we're not going to tell you what you need to think.
Mm-hmm.
You, at the very least, have control of what's between your ears.
Mm.
That's a crazy... See, my problem with this timeline, as I mentioned to you already, is I've been kind of trickle feeding myself a little bit of Iranian history recently.
Okay.
Because Persian history is like this huge black hole.
Sure.
In my repertoire of world history,
it's not something that Americans are going to promote. Not in a favorable light.
But it's a it's a whole other half of civilization.
Yeah.
That we it's technically not Western, and it's sort of informally Eastern.
Yeah, but it's Middle Eastern too, but it's not yeah.
But anyways, I said
and it, what a lot of people don't recognize is that, in this center of the world where all these like civilizations are coming together in the Middle East in the early times, because it's basically the crossroads of the world, that like there are Jews that separated that way, and some went towards Europe and some went to Persia, right? And they had very different experiences. Like the ones in Persia, they didn't suffer the Holocaust.
Well, and it's funny.
And so they're not the European Western type of Jews that took over Israel, that came back, that England gave to the Israel to.
But the Cyrus cylinder is interesting to me because of what Jefferson says in the Declaration. He has this line in there where he basically says to the effect, it is human nature that people who are suffering it's human nature to tolerate what is sufferable. So if you
pull the Declaration of Independence back up, Bob, because it's a line in the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, because he basically is saying, like, not everybody should sit here and try to control the government over and over for minor things, right?
Yeah. He says governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown In other words, this is borne out time and time again
Mm-hmm.
that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. Now, me and my work buddy were discussing this the other day. We were talking about something. I think we were talking about the Ukraine Russia situation,
Right.
and he was like, you get really fiery and upset about this whole Ukraine conflict, and he was like, but I like he's like, I'm just curious, what like how does it actually affect you? Like why what is the US effort in the Ukraine actually doing to affect you? And I was like, dude, I've paid my taxes my whole life. That's my money that they're sending over there to the Ukraine.
Oh, it's more than
For
your money, brother. It's your children's money and their children's money. Go
yeah,
ahead.
but it's my money, it's your money, it's
And it's
everybody's
also
money.
taken away from your money because they're printing this money,
Hmm.
which is creating inflation, which means your money is now much more less valuable.
Granted,
Sorry, yeah.
granted, let's chalk that up to light and transient.
Hmm.
The money issue. Let's say
Yeah.
that is too. Anyways, point is I was explaining to him, look, yeah, a little bit of my money out getting sent somewhere overseas. Like at the end of the day, yeah, it doesn't seem like that's affecting my day to day life. But here's the thing: governments use taxes in order to socially engineer populations. They will impose embargoes. If there's a disagreement with China or Russia, we set an embargo. We set limits.
Tariffs and other things.
Yeah, fundamentally you shift policies in the stock market and exchange rates.
Mm-hmm.
You take things off the gold standard. You change policies. You enact taxes, such as income taxes. When the income tax was originally instituted, it was intended to be a temporary, necessary imposition.
Mm-hmm.
But they just kept it going. And now everybody takes it for granted that, yeah, you lose a certain amount of your paycheck every day. Every hour you work, some of that's getting cut off and sent up to Washington.
Mm.
Now everybody takes that for granted. That's a clear example of how taxation is used to socially engineer and subdue people into certain squares. This is the nature of how the cubicle is built.
Yeah, but I mean, I think throughout time, look, taxes are a thing, right? Even in the Bible, you hear about tax collectors, right?
Yeah.
Now,
But what was
it wasn't coming directly out of your check, and they did that because it's a lot easier than sending a tax collector around and knock on your door and ask for your money and half of your wheat or whatever.
But I'll defend this. I'll defend this argument. The founding fathers recognized this.
Mm-hmm.
They recognized that taxation is more than just chipping your fair share into the pool.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than just pooling your resources fairly with everyone else.
Right.
It is it's an institution that is used to socially engineer compliance in people.
I don't think that's its only purpose. I think it's being used that in many ways now specifically, but I don't think in those days like that was necessary. Social engineering by what? Building roads, building schools, the things that taxes are supposed to do, which we might get into in the Constitution.
Yeah,
I don't plan on it, but it's there.
It's not
right?
that it's not that taxes themselves are evil. It's not that it's an evil monolith.
Yeah.
I think. But even the founding fathers, like they fought a revolution. Like they fought an uphill war up until they got funding and backed by the French. Thanks to Franklin and Lafayette.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, they were fighting an uphill battle because they recognized the insidious nature of how Great Britain was using taxation to basically subjugate all these other people. And they as British citizens were being, they as British citizens were being slowly, systematically sort of marginalized. They were being sort of boxed into, they recognized that Americans were being boxed into a separate category than homeland British citizens.
Yeah.
And they recognized this insidious long con that was taking place. And they decided, you know what? We're all the way on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. We've been running our own businesses. We've been building our own roads. We've been building our own houses. We don't need this outside entity to dictate to us anymore.
Well, he's not offering us anything really substantial. We're not getting anything in return of our taxes. They're just we're just slaves to them, right? We're just subjects to the King of Britain and what he says when he says it and how he wants to say it.
And I think it's remiss to ignore the fact that in this discussion of how the concept of freedom has evolved,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to divulge too far down that rabbit hole, but it's not a coincidence that so many of the founding fathers weren't just bright beaming intellectuals like Jefferson. They were also Freemasons. They were like, that was literally like the group they were a part of, was this group that has a tradition of, you learn to build, and then you go out and you build what you want.
Mm.
It's not, I can build, who wants me to build, who wants to hire me, who wants to pay my salary. It's, what will I build?
Mm. You know, looking back at that section that you kind of pulled out where he's discussing that accordingly all experience has shown that mankind is more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. And then he goes on, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty. And I think there's a change too, because yeah, there had been some revolutions in the past at this time. If I remember correctly, this is around the same time that the French Revolution is occurring, right?
Comes right after.
It comes right after, right? So this because see, the idea that the monarchs of the world are oppressing the common people was huge. And so these ideas of liberty, I will note, freedom is not used in anything I read there. Independence is used. Rights are used. And they kind of define the rights, the inalienable rights, as what? Life, which means my right to live, right? Liberty, which I interpret as freedom, but in the New Citizen, pull up a new tab and the definition, or you can go to the definition of freedom and give me the definition of liberty, please. So life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I have an inalienable right to be alive just by being born, right? Like no one should kill me, right? Now we can talk about the whole abortion thing, and nobody should, like liberty. Before them, huh?
Click on liberty down there at the bottom.
Liberty. All right.
Liberty, the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views.
Mm-hmm. Go back to the Declaration of Independence, please.
So you have the right to not be oppressed for what's between your ears.
Right. I'm allowed. To me, that's what it really comes down to, is the freedom to. So, but let me back up, because life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? So I have the right to life, the right to live. I am saying that most likely this has to do with once you're born, just by the fact of being born. And I don't want to get into the argument of when you're human and all the abortion stuff right now. So I'm going to assume that these people writing this at this time would not have considered abortion, or would have considered that you have to be born naturally to be subject to these rights: life, the right to live, liberty, the right to the freedom to think and act, and the pursuit of happiness, which is more of the act, right? It is for me to think what makes me happy, what makes me content, and my freedom to go do that, right? If what makes me happy is going to a factory and putting together widgets all day, then so be it. But if I want to if I want to go to Walden Pond and sit and meditate for 20 years, then that's my right as well, right? Um, whatever level that I want to participate with the rest of society is up to me and my freedom as well, right? I don't have to join a specific group of people or co-sign on a specific group of people. Um, so again, the Declaration of Independence is a catalyst. Building on the Cylinder of Cyrus, which is one of the first codifications of the freedom of religion, the freedom to think, right?
Mm-hmm.
The freedom of a philosophy, of a worldview, and then we have the Magna Carta. Will you pull up the Magna Carta document itself? I want to read the actual. I don't want people telling me what it says and how to interpret it. I want the words myself. The original edition. Yeah, and hey, that's a tip I want to give everybody right now. I'm gonna take a little commercial break. Stop letting all these people interpret shit for you, man. Read it for yourself. Stop listening to the news. Go, you can go watch Congress working like this on C-SPAN. You know what I'm saying? And you can find it on YouTube. Go listen to what they're actually saying. We live in a world right now where everybody wants to interpret everything for everybody and tell you what it means. Read it for yourself. All right. First, that we have granted.
Go up to that first capital word at the top. John. There we
go. All right. John, by the grace of God, King of England, Lord of Ireland, Duke of Normandy and Aquitaine, and the Count of Anjou, to his archbishops, bishops, abbots, earls, barons, justices, foresters, sheriffs. That's too much, bro. That's just a bunch of ass kiss.
He's like,
Dear John, this is the first Dear John letter right here, bro. This is like, we're breaking up, but okay. Like legitimately, this is a first dear for the health of our soul and for, all right. Greetings. Know that before God, for the health of our soul and those of our ancestors and heirs, to the honor of God, the exaltation of the Holy Church, and the better ordering of our kingdom, at the advice of our reverend fathers, Stephen, Archbishop of Canterbury, Primate of all England, and Cardinal of the Holy Roman Church, blah, 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 blah. It means nothing to me.
Go down to +1.
Okay. I thought there was going to be some actual information in there. So, +1, that we have granted to God, and by his present charter have confirmed for us and our heirs in perpetuity, that the English Church shall be free, and shall have its rights undiminished, and its liberties unimpaired. That we wish this so to be observed appears from the fact that our own free will, before the outbreak of the present dispute between us and our barons, we granted and confirmed by charter the freedom of the church's elections, a right reckoned to be the great necessity and importance to it, and caused this to be confirmed by Pope Innocent III. This freedom we shall observe ourselves and desire to be observed in good faith by our heirs in perpetuity. What did I just say? My ADD brain just went.
It's saying.
No comprehendo, bro.
It's saying we've had this understanding that we handle our church's business. And up until recently, it was always treated that way, that we had the right to elect our own congregations and set our own
Okay.
governesses. And Pope Innocent III reflected this sentiment. And
Thank you.
now we're saying this is a non negotiable,
Got it.
where this is our declaration.
So that was one of the freedoms they want. They wanted the not just freedom of religion. They wanted the freedom to participate in and effectuate their church.
Mm-hmm. They're arguing for a system. They're saying, look, it hasn't been codified, it hasn't been set into stone,
Right.
and declared from the hilltops.
Because too often the king has probably usurped that, planted his own people in the positions where he wants them
and again,
to oppress the people.
And again, it's
through
that
the church.
little bureaucratic drip.
Yeah.
It's that Chinese water method of you're just slowly breaking everyone down with these little concessions.
Yeah.
And this is the point where they hauled the king's ass out on a boat in the middle of the lake and said, "We don't leave the lake till you sign this, till you acknowledge this, and you give this the seal of approval. Until you codify this, you ain't getting out of this boat."
So it starts to talk about some things that are very specific to landowners and other freedoms there. But again, it's this codification of certain rights. The idea that, because see, before it's written down and before it's established, right? Because if it's not written down and codified, then it's not the law. Then the next king can come in and be like, "I don't know what you're talking about, man, but you're gonna do it my way. Or you're gonna get the pike." You know what I'm saying?
They're saying, and then look at this: "To all free men of our kingdom, we have also granted for us and our heirs forever all the liberties written out below, to have and to keep for them and their heirs of us and our heirs."
Right.
So
this is the codification. This is an establishment of a rule.
You ain't Chinggis.
Right.
We're not dealing with Chinggis.
Right. Right. And remember, these are the landowners. These are the barons and the people that serve the crown directly. Right. Even up to that level, they recognized that they had no real freedom and that they needed to codify it.
And it's so funny. It's so funny because, like with Jefferson, there's this flair. There's this near artistic,
poetic, as I said.
Yeah, penmanship. But here, it's got Peaky Blinders vibes, where they're like, "All right, you wanted it written down into law. You're so obsessed with laws. Here, we're gonna haul your ass out in this boat. We got some laws for you."
Right. Why did that go off? Okay.
Alas.
Must have had a power switch there. So we get this slow march to freedom and the codification of it. And again, why is this important to me? Because without codification, without these documents, the next ruler comes in. Remember, the next guy that can kick everybody else's ass. If these are just, like the rules of baseball that are unwritten, but they're there and everybody knows them. Mm-hmm. Well, the next king can kind of create his own and change stuff. And you know what I mean? He doesn't have to follow stuff. Because remember, you don't like it, he's just going to kick your ass anyway. And this gives some kind of validity. It gives some kind of some oomph to the words, right? Because it's written. And so now I can say, no, my great grandpappy fought for these rights, and it's written down, and it was agreed to and signed by the king and the pope and the people that matter. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And because it was written down, now you're going to have more people that are willing to say, "Oh, this king's a bad king. He wants to throw away our rights in a much different way." Because it is written down and because other people did fight for it. So, and so we get to, after the Declaration of Independence, we tell the king, "Look, you've been doing it too long. Taxation without representation was was the meme. The Boston Tea Party was the meme. The Stamp Act was the meme. All these different things, right? Um, and so then we get to the point where we fight, we win, and now we've got to organize this new country. And honestly, like, to create something almost out of thin air and to use all the ideas and the memes and the philosophies throughout Western Europe, throughout the history that had been provided to them, the educations that had provided to them, to pull the good out of the Greek systems, to pull the good out of the Roman systems, and the philosophers that had come out of those times, and to create the republic which stands today, right? And yes, it is a republic. This isn't a democracy. The idea that this is democracy is ludicrous. It's a republic. What is a republic? We get to vote for our representation. A democracy means we vote on everything. There's no Congress in a democracy. Okay, Congress in and of itself means this is not a democracy, right? Because they're voting for us. We vote for them, then they vote for us on the daily stuff.
It's democratic in spirit.
Yeah,
but ultimately,
you know what? So is the Democratic Republic of North Korea.
Yeah.
So, as we're codifying it in the United States, in our early founding writers and framers, in the Constitution, they recognize that we're going to come up with the Bill of Rights. Good citizen, if you would pull up the Bill of Rights, please. Does he have a cat he's playing with? Because that's what. The Bill of Rights is transcription. Those are the articles. Keep going. The U.S. Bill of Rights. Thank you. The following text is a transcription of the first 10 amendments of the Constitution in their original form. These amendments were ratified on December 15 of 1791 and form what is known as the Bill of Rights. So these Bill of Rights, similar to what in the Magna Carta had, which was, they said, okay, these are the rights, the below rights are what we want for our heirs and for our heirs' heirs and the heirs of our heirs' heirs. I don't think that's exact. Don't quote me on that. Yeah. And they came up with the first 10 amendments, and there are more amendments than that. Would you scroll back up, please? But the first 10 were like the ones that they kind of codified, and hopefully as we get to it, we'll see that it is this Constitution that other constitutional republics, constitutional monarchies, it becomes the baseline of constitutions that are being created for the next couple hundred years. I mean, colonialism doesn't really end until after World War II, if you really want to say it ended there. The United States thing of spreading democracy as we kind of spread our capitalism around the world. A lot of those countries, when we got rid of their dictator that we didn't like because he wouldn't work with us, we tried to create a system like what we have here. And so oftentimes they would come up with their own constitution. And oftentimes it was based on ours, and they would try to tweak it and fix it to, maybe there are some holes in ours, and so they might fix it or things that are contextually appropriate for them. So, these Bill of Rights in these United States. Number 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or permitting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, I'm not a constitutional law scholar, and I never went to Harvard or nothing like that, and I don't think you should have to. I don't think you should have to in order to be able to understand and interpret this thing, right? I think it's kind of clear. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, which means Congress cannot make a law that says we support or do not support one religion over the other. Plain and simple, the government should stay out of religion. Period. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, which means, again, the government should stay out of religion. If we want to gather down by the river and smoke our big hookahs and baptize each other, then that's on us. Like, they shouldn't be allowed to interfere with that at all. And remember that for me, the freedom of religion is like the freedom of philosophy. It's the freedom to think, right? It's the freedom to say, what am I doing here and what's the bigger picture, right? It's the freedom to have my own philosophy. It's not just the freedom to say I'm Baptist or Catholic, right? It's not the freedom to choose which denomination I want to be a part of, right? It's my freedom to have my own religion. If I want to be Rastafari and you know what I'm saying, like the Mormons, whatever, like I'm free to do that. It doesn't matter. The government has no say so over it. The freedom of speech or the freedom of press, or the right of people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government of redress. So it's the freedom of thought and the freedom to share my thoughts, right? Whether it's my freedom to think and stand on the corner and say, I think the sky is purple and we have mislabeled it all these years. If that's what I want to do on a street corner, I'm supposed to be allowed to do it, right? As long as I'm in public, on public, freedom of speech, period. And if I'm going to say some shit that I disagree with, that other people are going to disagree with, I have that right to stand on my corner and say my piece, and to do so with freedom, not suffer the consequences of violence because I said the N-word. No, I have the freedom to speak my words. I don't care if they offend you. They're my words and my thoughts. You don't like them, come up with your counter argument, find your corner, and say your piece. That's what it was. That's what it's supposed to be.
You don't get to change the laws because I said something that made you upset.
Yeah, and you don't get to criminalize me for my speech. I don't care how vulgar, I don't care how hateful. Like this whole idea of hate speech, the next thing you know, you're gonna be like, a good citizen said my shirt was blue. That's fighting words. and like that, where's the freedom of speech in that? No, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me because I'm a grown person. And you know what? When I was a little boy, I was still a grown person because I knew better that sticks and stones will break my bones. You crack on me, I'm cracking back. You're fat too. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, grow up. Sorry. Calm down, Chad. But you understand what I'm saying? To me, that's the truth. That's the real freedom of speech. And that's one of the things that if you've looked at any of our history together for Dillion and I over the last 30 some odd podcasts, this is something that's important to us. And we do feel that our current government and our current systems are, what was the word? Well, they are, hold on, what's the definition of freedom or liberty? State of being free within a society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority of one's way of life, behavior, and political views. Oh, yeah. So remember, Declaration of Independence, the right to liberty, the definition being from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority of one's way of life, behavior, or political views. And yes, I do think that liberty should extend to who you want to sleep with in your bed. Or if you want to define yourself in a certain way, you have that freedom. You have the freedom of thought to do that. What you don't have the freedom to do is stop me from having my opinion about it. Period.
I have the right to make an argument.
Yeah, I have the right to make an argument. I have the right to disagree. I have the right to have my own thoughts, and you can't criminalize them. So, because that's how we get to the truth. See, anytime somebody wants to restrict your speech, that's because they know that they're not telling the whole truth. They don't want to hear your truth. They don't want to get to the truth. All they want is their way. And then they want to be like, oh, I'm a pussy. He called me names. He didn't use my right pronouns. That's violence. That's bullshit. Take that back to the Constitution. I'm telling you.
Well, and when we met, I was still going to school
Yeah,
to be an English teacher.
I really did get hyped up there. I was trying to be cool, bro. Trying to be cool. It's hard to be cool and a bunch of assholes in this world trying to tell me what to do. That's not cool, bro.
Well, as a former English instructor, as a former English educator in training,
Mm-hmm.
I don't say this lightly when I say this ties back into the point I was making with my buddy about taxes. Taxation on face value seems like, well, yeah, I chip in, everybody else chips in, we all chip in, and we all pool our resources, and somebody builds the roads.
Yeah,
Somebody keeps the hospitals subsidized.
sure. The schools,
On the face of it,
our
that's
defense, our military. Go
yeah.
ahead.
On the face of it, that's all that implies.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same way that small impositions of taxation that drip, drip, drip,
Yeah.
the same way that that's used to socially engineer people to the extent that now nobody thinks twice about the fact that you got to pay income tax. Even though the original guarantee or the original promise was, we just need this for a little bit. We just need everybody to chip in a little bit extra right now.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody thinks twice about that. Nobody really you don't hear people discussing that very often. It's not a common concern. It's not.
I think most people understand that taxes are a form of chipping in, and I think that most people, even in the constitutional days, you understand that the government has to finance itself somehow, right? And who is the government? It's we, the people. So we have to finance the government. And how do you do that fairly? Well, you create a tax code, right? And you create what you're going to spend those taxes on. Okay. Now, again, before that, we don't have a fair system. Not to say our current system's fair, but we don't have a fair system. Before that, the king or monarch or warlord sent his people around and they went and looked at your stores and they're like, oh, wow, you got a barn full of wheat there. Let me have 75%. Oh, you don't like that? I'm going to punch you in the nuts. I think like it didn't matter. I'm taking it anyway. Right? Oh, and oh, by the way, now we've got a war. We're taking 100%. And there's nothing you can do about it because if you do something about it, we're going to shoot you. We're going to stab you. Or we're going to put you on a pike. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I feel like it's coming in our modern context because what has happened over time is our federal government has used our taxes. And don't get me wrong, some governments are using their wealth that they're stealing from their people to enforce and encourage their people to certain behaviors. But I think on the base idea of an income or on a base tax, like I don't think that necessarily equates to social engineering unless you consider social engineering building schools, building roads, and that we all are collectively trying to build our nation. But see, here's the problem: we do have a system where now money is being taken out of our pockets with a way larger percentage than what I think it should be, and we're specifically using it to study how to socially engineer us. So in that regard, you're definitely right, but I just want to like be clear that I don't think the original intention of the tax or of a tax, the idea of a tax, is for social engineering. I think that there's some legitimate uses of we collectively chip in.
It's not that I'm saying taxation is this big goat horn devil,
right,
that we should be afraid of. I'm saying it is a tool in someone else's arsenal that you're not allowed to have. Because that Second Amendment is the amendment about the right to bear arms.
Mm-hmm.
It's the right to physically defend yourself in the event that these rights are getting trampled upon.
Mm-hmm.
Taxation is a weapon someone else has, you're not allowed to own.
Well, let's kind of back that up. We're fighting, remember the meme at the time is taxation without representation. Supposedly, what we did is creating our system is we gave ourselves representation. That's what a republic is, right? You vote for who represents your district or your state, and they vote on the laws as they come out on a daily basis.
And yes, taxes are necessary in the same way that it's necessary that Randy Rando Quaid is not allowed to own a nuclear reactor. He's not allowed to have that in his backyard garage.
Yeah.
It is necessary for somebody more competent or in a higher position of authority or intelligence.
If he's got enough money, they're gonna let him do it. I mean, look at Elon. If Elon wanted to create a nuclear reactor in a nuclear situation, they'd let him do it. So,
but I think we're remiss. I think we're remiss to look at July 4th and think about this concept of freedom and maintaining your freedom and actually sticking up for yourself, sticking up for it, standing by your human right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Sure.
You're allowed to fuck it up for you.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to get back to the Bill of Rights because I didn't want to get on the. I don't want to like
completely derail
on the taxation issue, because in my opinion, that First Amendment, the reason why it's the First Amendment is the one. It is the most important one. It's number one because without that, you don't have the liberty, right? That is the liberty they're talking about. The freedom to think, the freedom to share my thoughts, and the freedom to take it to my government, right? The freedom for me and you and 50 other people to go down to City Hall and say, we don't like the way y'all are doing. We think that you're not giving us the right freedom. And the freedom of press to write it in pamphlets, to create a YouTube page or take video or whatever. Remember, everybody with the camera is press. You are press. All press is instead of you speaking your words, you've written them down or you put it on a video. What I'm doing right now is press. Like, well, yeah, I mean, it's press.
Yeah.
This isn't news, right? This is press. This is what the press is. Because the press, most people equate it with the news, but that's not it. The press was the printing press, right? So it's the freedom of speech or of the press, which means that I had the right to put whatever words on paper that I wanted to.
This video is our op-ed.
Yeah, definitely.
There's really no difference.
Basically none. So, because of the First and the importance of it, the Second Amendment is the right to defend that, with a well-regulated militia being necessary to secure the free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, we'll have a lot of arguments about the rights of the militia, and we'll have a lot of arguments that we don't need a militia anymore because we've got a standing army and all that bullshit. Again, as I just declared, it is bullshit. The idea is that if an oppressive government comes in, that we can form a well-regulated militia. Why can we do that? Because we have citizens that have their own guns, that are willing to fight, right? That's why the Second Amendment is the right of the people to keep and bear arms, right? To keep their arms, to show their arms, to use their arms. This isn't just for hunting and sport. This is literally to fight tyranny and oppression. And I know a lot of people don't like that, but, and look, I'm not a big proponent of violence. But at some point, if the aggressor is violent, you might have to meet that violence with violence in order to defend yourself. And it says shall not be infringed, right? This is very clear, to me, it's very clear language. The truth is, if I can afford it, I should be able to own tanks and fighter airplanes and helicopters and everything. If I want to have my own fucking army, I should be able to have it. That's my right. Now, is it my right to take it into the local police station and blow them up? Not necessarily. I might need to write a Declaration of Independence before I do it. But part of it is this. There's a long-standing thing that other countries, they didn't even dare try to attack the United States because they knew if they built our military, fine. But you still got to go house to house and everybody's got a gun. So you got to fight the people, right? This ain't like Iraq where we walk in, we beat some bullshit army and we're able to go into everybody's houses and do what the fuck we want to do, right? Because they have no ability to fight us. This isn't Mexico where they took everybody's guns away and now the police can't even compete with the cartel. And now the cartel's running in your house telling you what to do, right? So it's not just an oppressive government, it's a weak government that allows some other oppressive organization, whether it's the Gambino family or the Mexican cartels in Jalisco, to tell you what to do, right? The right to bear arms is a right to defend yourself and to defend your right to be your person, to think your thoughts, to say your thoughts, and to assemble and hang around who you want to. Third Amendment, no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in the time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. All right? So this one is set up because, look, England comes in, they're like, oh, these rascally rebels, they want their freedom, their liberty. Okay, well, we're going to bring all our soldiers. Well, guess what? We're going to put them in your house, Dylan, and you got to feed them, and they get to run your house. And guess what? You don't want to create a stink because they're just like police, They'll just say you had an infraction and your ass is going to jail and they're going to take all your shit anyway.
Imagine that. Imagine if every time the cops showed up to your house, you were obligated by law
to let them in.
Yeah.
And feed them and kiss their ass. Yeah. Number 4. The right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against the unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, and the persons or things to be seized. This is a really important one too, right? Why are they creating this one? Well, the thing is if they don't like what you're saying in the First Amendment, they might come to your house and just harass you, take your shit and use it against you, right? And
essentially what I'm seeing there is innocent till proven guilty. You have to have a case that I'm guilty already. You have to have evidence already prepared.
You have to have some probable cause, is what they say. You have to have some type of evidence.
Yeah.
You can't just make up a willy-nilly thing and then go into my house and find my crime.
You can't just... Basically what that's saying is the sentiment of, well, if you have nothing to hide, you should have nothing to fear.
Yeah, this counters that. This calls bullshit on that whole theory.
That doesn't fly here.
No, that doesn't fly here.
Recognize that.
No, we don't recognize that. No, what should happen is, unless you think I'm doing something wrong and have some kind of real evidence that I'm doing something wrong, you should leave me alone. Mm-hmm. Because I think thing that they realize too, look, if you come in at any person and you start going through their phones and their bank accounts and their records, you can usually find something somebody did wrong. To me, that's what they're doing to Trump right now. Right? Yeah. If you pull out everybody's curtains and go into everybody's house and you pull up everybody's rugs, you're going to find some dirt. That's just how it is. Because nobody's perfect. Who's without sin type of shit, right? And so they recognize that, right? Because they know that if they can just start in and come trumping up charges on you. Or they can just harass you, right? Which they're doing. They do that now. I mean, their ability to go into your internet and pull that up to me, that's where I should be secure in my persons and papers and effects. To me, my email, my Facebook, that should all be considered part of my effects. And nobody should be able to go into that and read it and search it without my permission and or probable cause. Because the probable cause has to be supported by oath or affirmation. And particularly describing the place to be searched. So it can't be just the police coming up and saying, "Hey, I think old Dillion again, he's cooking that meth And so we're gonna bum rush his house at 4 o'clock in the morning, guns blazing, boy, because Officer Dimwitty over here decided that he thinks old Dillon's selling the methamphetamines. You know what I mean? Like he can't do that. He has to be like, you know what? Dillon's fucking
He
neighbor.
looked at me funny. Don't nobody but a meth head give you a look like that.
Right. Or but so it has to be oath or affirmed. So like your neighbor has to call, right? It can't be a cop. Cop can't do it. It has to be your neighbor. Neighbor calls. Hey, there's a lot of traffic. We're seeing needles. Fucking people nodding out in the front yard. We think there's a fucking operation going on here. And then I think overall they're allowed to come and check it out, but that's not enough probable cause. That's enough to start an investigation, but that's not reasonable articulable suspicion. Somebody else's suspicions does not give the cops the right to violate your rights, right? They have to that once they have reasonable articulable suspicion, now they can detain you and continue their investigation. But that's it, right? Um, and again, at the end of the day, they can't just make it up or fucking do it, right? It's innocent until proven guilty. So we go on to the Fifth Amendment. Oh, and sorry, but the Fourth Amendment. So to me, the rights of my person, houses, papers, and effects, to me, that should be in my car as well, right? That should be my private space. If you can see it in the windows, fine. But to me, you shouldn't be able to go through my car just because I should have the right to travel. Honestly, do I have an issue with like I'm showing that I know how to drive a car or paying a little bit of taxes to keep the roads up? No, not an issue. Um, I kind of have an issue with the insurance, but at the end of the day, I kind of get it. So anyway, I don't want to get too. I'm almost going on a tangent on myself. Stop it, Chet. Cut it out. So Amendment number 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Man, this is one. It's so heavy, man. There's so often that they like just override this one, man. Your Fifth Amendment, it's really important. Number one, the biggest thing that stands out to me is the Fifth Amendment is the one that most people should recognize as your right to stay silent. You do not have to participate in their investigation. You do not have to incriminate yourself to the police or the courts, right? You don't have to testify if you don't want to. You don't have to get up and swear the oath that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to incriminate yourself, right? You are allowed to shut your mouth and not incriminate. You don't have to tell on yourself. The other part of that that's really important is that, and I think this is one that's really kind of weird that I think they found some ways around it, but no person shall be subject to the same for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. See, I think nowadays you do one infraction and they'll create 5 different infractions out of the one, right? Like
that's the workaround.
Yeah, and I think that to me, I think it's a really veiled workaround, and it's really weak, and I think it's BS. But like okay, so you go and you steal something from a store, and then they're gonna come up with like 5 charges for you stealing from the store, and I just think that's so against the Fifth Amendment. And then not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Well, that's another one. It's like, so when I got busted for selling marijuana, And the police, they were really happy the night that they arrested me. And that cop even told me, this truck is ours. Because his first question was, which bank does this belong to? I'm like, what are you talking about, which bank? He's like, where do you pay your car note? I was like, it's my fucking car, bro. There's no car note. It's mine. He's like, it's mine now. um, Anyway, so they take my shit to the impound and they don't indict me for like a long time. So 6 months later, I'm like, I want my car back. Right. And of course, the prosecutor's like, well, we take it under this thing where drug traffickers and we're allowed to take their shit and da 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 da. And this is where the due process came up because the judge looked at him and was like, you give him back his car. You arrested him 6 months ago. You haven't indicted. You can't just keep his shit indefinitely. You know, that was a good judge down there in Kentucky that did that for me. Because I think a lot of judges would have let that prosecutor and let them police get away with it. So the judge is like, nah, you can't just keep his shit indefinitely. You're not even indicting him. Yeah, there's the thing that says that you can take it from drug, but you haven't proven that he's a drug trafficker. You know what I'm saying? You haven't indicted him. You haven't given him grand jury.
You're just harassing him.
You're just harassing him. Exactly. So I got my vehicle back.
Judge.
Without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So they can't just come and take your shit. You know, they can. They got to pay you. Amendment number 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. Public trial, so that other people can see it. In today's day and age, I think that means cameras if you want them. If you're the defendant, you should be able to decide if you want cameras or not. That's my opinion. By an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have assistance of counsel for his defense. So this is the one where you have a right to a lawyer. It's actually number 6. And you also, a lot of people don't recognize this. You have to be confronted with the witnesses against you, right? Somebody can't just make an accusation and charge you with something and then not show up, right? This also means that the police cannot be, this is the one that said, basically understand that the police cannot be the ones that are the witnesses against you. Although I think that's a little, I'm willing to let that be a big gray area.
Assistance of counsel there's a big workaround for that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this free public defender.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully,
who works for us, whose career is dependent on their relationship with the judges and all the social circles within the courthouse. You know what I mean? Like their future career is based on networking and how well they network. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But they're really working with a bunch of prosecutors, cops, and judges. You know what I'm saying? Like people don't respect public defenders. If you notice, people who run for government offices, you'll rarely see a public defender do it successfully, because the argument will be, well, you defended a rapist, or you defended this, or you defended that, right? I'm a grapist. Please, YouTube, don't delete me. Give me some liberty. Please. But so.
Yeah, no, you never take the public defender.
I mean, if you ain't got nothing else, but yeah, public defender is a really bad choice. But yeah, my point is that, like, you know, they really are. They don't get offices because people are like, well, you defended the drug dealer, or you defended this, or you defended that. Most times it's always a prosecutor, and it's always a prosecutor. It's like Janine Pirro or daggone Kamala Harris. I'm like, they've got 100% conviction rate. I'm sorry, if you've got 100% conviction rate as a prosecutor, that tells me several things. It tells me, one, that you let a lot of people get away because you didn't want to lose. Because it wasn't a shoe-in for you. So you weren't really doing your job if you got 100%. Number 2, it tells me that you railroaded a lot of people. You know how they did it? They took one incident. What was the word up here? Uh, same offense. So they take one offense and they create like 5 different infractions of it, right? And so they take these 5 infractions. They're like, really, your big crime was stealing. But in the act of stealing, as in any act of stealing, you have done these other crimes, right? And so what they do is they scare you because they're like, if we charge you with all these, you're going to do 50 years. You know, you're going to do 10 years behind this one and 2 years behind that one. And you're looking at 50 years. But if you make this little plea agreement with our prosecutor, we're just going to charge you with one thing and we'll give you your 2 years in jail for it. To me, that's a big workaround, and I think that's bullshit. And that's what, when I see somebody with the 100% conviction rate as a prosecutor, I know they bullied a lot of people. I know a lot of innocent people went to prison or jail, I know a lot of innocent people got convicted, and I know a lot of guilty people got let go. That's what I know. If you see a prosecutor with a 100% conviction rate, that is the truth. So Miss Janine Pirro and Miss Kamala Harris. No, I have no respect. I have no respect for a prosecutor like that. I have no respect for a prosecutor with a 100% conviction rate. It tells me that you did not do your job correctly.
On the flip side,
and it tells me you railroaded a lot of people. What?
On the flip side of that, to balance a big negative with a big positive, there's these dudes. I don't know if you ever heard of the Innocence Project.
Yeah.
But those dudes.
Yeah. I mean,
Mother Teresa wasn't saintly the way those lawyers are.
Right.
That run the Innocence Project.
And the Innocence Project is a good example of, obviously some of these are not being held up because, like, that goes back to 100% conviction rates and how much, Kamala Harris hides information and doesn't give all the information. And I mean, I'm sorry, man. You got a 100% conviction rate. It tells me you are dirty.
Capital T.
So, anyway, number 7, in suits at common law where the value controversy exceeds $20, the right of trial, jury is preserved, and the fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in the court of the United States than according to the rules of common law. In suits of common law where the value of controversy exceeds $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved. So, okay, if it's over $20, which at that time was like fucking $100, $500, I'd say back then having $20 was like having $1,000 today. Like, you were doing good with $20. So anyway, that one just says that, even though it's a common law issue, it's civil is what I'm kind of looking at. It's like a civil that you can still do a trial by jury. Amendment number 8, excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted.
That's just straight ignored.
Straight ignored. I don't know. I mean, at times it is, right? At times it's just like, we're going to give an excessive...
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, yeah, there is always some...
like I've been let on bail on my dad's recognizance, on my own recognizance. Like, to me, I think that it depends on the judge. It's such a discretionary thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the cruel and unusual punishment. I think that there's a lot of that goes on. I think being put in prison and not being monitored and being raped and being beat up and all the crimes that happen in prison, like
straight the Eighth Amendment on the whole, just not enforced.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not really enforced at all.
Maybe the bails.
And what is but what's excessive, right?
Because it's like that's in the public eye too.
Yeah, it's what's excessive to the public. So if a really really rich person gets caught up and they have some ridiculously high amount of bail, they'll be like, well, it's not excessive to him. It'd be excessive to Chet, but it's not excessive to them. And number 9, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed or denied or disparaged others retained by the people. I'm going to read that again. The enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. What the?
What that says to me is okay, so an example of what that would mean to me is that is a dense one.
Yeah. It is very. Well, let's break it down real quick. The enumeration. What is enumeration? What is?
Look up the word.
Look up enumeration. Please and thank you, good citizen. We do appreciate your assistance today. Thank you for giving up your freedom to do whatever it was the fuck that you wanted to do. To come sit and be our little mouse. And clickety click click and clickety clack clack. All right. The action of mentioning a number of things by one.
Oh, so he's essentially saying the First Amendment does not override.
How many fucking police officers totally go over this one? Go back to the the Ninth Amendment. So, the enumeration of the Constitution or of certain rights. So, by me saying the Constitution gives me rights, and I have rights that shall not be construed to deny or disparage.
It essentially.
So every time how the cops do now is like, oh, I don't know, officer. I have certain rights, and they're like, oh, are you a lawyer now? Oh, you think you know the law and Constitution? I don't care about your Constitution. That is 1,000% against the Ninth Amendment.
Let me give you an example.
Please do.
This is gonna be a shitty example, but it's one.
Does it smell shitty?
We'll see.
Go.
But no, like, so like for instance, I have a gun. When I'm out in public, I feel like keeping my gun on me.
Right.
That makes you uncomfortable.
Right.
So you're not allowed to basically make this case that, you're not allowed to argue that the knowledge of me walking around in a public facility with a weapon I'm allowed to have.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to claim some sort of redress like, well, he's inhibiting my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness because it's mentally wearing on me that somebody else has a weapon. So
that's how you're... Okay, so you're saying that...
You can't... Basically what it says to me is you can't place value judgments on these. This whole document was written as a piece. This is of a piece.
Yeah.
You don't get to pick and choose, okay, well, the First Amendment's most important. And
so you can't say... So, for instance, let's go back to free speech, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't be like, oh, it makes me uncomfortable that he's standing on the corner sharing his opinion. And since it's making me uncomfortable, I have a right to not be uncomfortable because I have the right to liberty and the pursuit of happiness, right? Mm-hmm. So I can't use that. I can't use my rights of the Constitution to take away somebody else's rights.
Yep.
Shall not be construed to deny or disparage. That's interesting. Because I also still think that I read it for the other way too, right? So, like some of our First Amendment auditors, shout out to First Amendment auditors who go out there and exercise their rights. And, somebody calls because there's a guy recording in the post office as the press and freedom of press, which the post office has signs on the wall that say that you're actually allowed to do it. But most people don't know that. And so most people will call the police. And then the police will come. And then so to me, when somebody's like, hey, I'm doing these rights, to me, it says that officer should not be allowed to deny or disparage my rights because of that. And I think at the same time, so it also is that they don't have a right to call and be like, I got a right to privacy. No, you don't. You're in public. Your rights don't trump his rights, so to speak. Your freedom of thought doesn't stop his freedom of expression, right?
It's funny to me how they have a few particular rights in the beginning of the document, and then like the further down you get in the Bill of Rights, the more it seems like it's not necessarily adding a new principle, but it's building a system
of protection.
Yeah,
to the rights.
Yeah, it's reiterating those.
In a way,
it's reiterating these.
It's almost like
rights.
It's looking for the ways that somebody could say, okay, the freedom of speech and the freedom of press. Here's certain ways that we've seen policing and governments oppress this. So therefore, we want to make sure that we cover these bases. I'm going to go to number 10. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectfully, or to the people. So, unless the Constitution delegates it as something that's the responsibility of the federal government, it is not the federal government's responsibility. I'm not a scholar, but I can almost guarantee you there's a lot of things the federal government has taken over that should be left to the states. And a lot of people might disagree with it, but one of the things of like Roe versus Wade, drug scheduling, Roe versus Wade, those things have also oftentimes been seen as at a federal level. And look, Roe versus Wade, duly so, because it was a law established by the Supreme Court, right? And a ruling established by the Supreme Court, but it really did take that right away from the states to choose how to do it, because that's how we're supposed to represent. What they recognized also is that whenever you have somebody way up here making rules and laws for people way down here, you lose a lot. These people become oppressed just by the function of the management style, because you don't have a proper communication up and down of what's really going on. And that's why the representation is important. That's why we have representation at a local level, a state level, federal level, right? Like, that's the way our government is built, like that, to give us the ability to, it's actually a beautiful thing, to cause change when needed without revolution. And look, it's not perfect. I get it. I mean, I really do. But it's one of the best things that's ever come. And really, one thing I love about the United States is we have like the best thing going on. And we also have the ability to bitch about all our problems, right? But literally, like, go to another country and tell me you've got more freedom there. Like, where? Tell me. Because one thing that COVID showed me was in an instant, all those people that think they were free in Canada, no, Canada, you're subject to the crown. You don't have a constitution protecting you. No, England, you're not free. You're subject to the crown. No, Philippines, you're locked in your homes. You're not allowed to go out. No, Australia, Brazil, anywhere in the world, they got the authoritarians just clamped down. All that illusion of freedom was just like, and they try to do it here. And that's one thing I'm celebrating this 4th of July. It's that Constitution, because I firmly believe the Constitution protected us from the malfeasance that was going on.
And you say that as the one person here who's been to other countries. You've been around the world.
I have. I've been around a third of the world.
You've been around the Americas.
Yeah, the Americas. I think that's the third of the world.
Yeah, probably. But that's
what I call it.
That's our hemisphere.
I definitely covered our hemisphere.
Yeah.
Up and down, baby. Anyway,
I say that to say that, like, you're not, like, that's not a, you've seen that.
Yes.
You that's not just some ivory tower thing you read in a book in a hammock.
I mean, to be fair, what I'm saying about COVID is watching the news and understanding, how things went.
I mean, to your broader point of, like, go somewhere else.
Yes.
Go see what it looks like when you
For sure.
Go see what it's like when you're in a country.
Go to Africa. You'll be back in a week.
Yeah, go visit a country run by a bunch of Escobars.
Yeah, exactly.
Go see what it's like.
Go see a warlord-led country. Yeah,
go see what it's like when you haven't had these rights systematized for you.
Amen.
From day one.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, go to Europe. I mean, I'm not talking about just like what people call third world or developing countries or whatever. I'm talking about Europe. Those people are not free. They're subject to the crown. Even, you know what I'm saying? Like, very few of them have any kind of true rights. If before COVID, there were a crap ton of riots all around the world because people were starting to recognize, bro. People started to recognize in France specifically.
Well, there's a special there's a special point I want to make in saying that because like. Okay. In the course of you and me sitting down and making these videos, like us just sitting down making conversation.
Thanks everybody for watching.
Ever since we've been doing that, I know I've said a couple of years back I remember making this comment to you a lot of like I just feel black pilled. Like I just feel like I kind of IV dripped the red pill into myself all through college. And then by the time I left college, I was looking around me thinking, all these institutions, like the whole system that we run on, like that was my reaction to coronavirus. The coronavirus pandemic was blackpilling for me because I couldn't go pick up a jug of milk without some little greeter running up to me and telling me I'm not allowed to enter the store unless I put this paper mache over my face. I'm not allowed to go to class unless I've got the paper mache on my face. Where's your muzzle? Mm-hmm. Where's your mask? Mm-hmm. That stuck in my craw so much worse than so many other people I saw on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And it was genuinely disheartening because I'm looking around thinking to myself for the first time, are we all willing to just let this go? Mm. Are we willing to just concede?
So many.
Are we willing to just not read it?
So many are just willing to suffer. Go back up to... Sorry, it's actually the Declaration of Independence that I'm looking at, that I'm thinking of.
When it's like what I was saying.
Oh, stop. Go back to Declaration of Independence. Stop. Prudence indeed will dictate that and accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind is more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. Most people are just willing to suffer it. The government says jump, they were like, oh, okay. Especially if the government's like, if you don't jump, I'm going to take your job. If you don't jump, I'm going to take your money. If you don't jump, you don't get to participate in society anymore. And that's what they did with COVID. That's what they tried to do with that vaccine. And thank you to our Constitution. Thank you. Because we'd have been, like everybody else, just a bunch of stuck guinea pigs, taking this new technology, messing with our DNA. Sorry, I just told everybody I'm anti-vaxxer. Don't cancel me.
So is the DNC's most prospective candidate for 2024.
Good. And so is everybody that should now have looked back at what they did and how they did it. Enjoy your blood clots, people.
But I say that to say that, like, I remember saying that. I remember saying that out loud many times while we sat down to make this video.
No, I want to take something back. I apologize because that is not fair for me to be like, enjoy your blood clots, people. I say that to the people that insisted that everybody had to get it. If it was your choice and you wanted to take the risk for your body, then so be it. If you felt that it made you safer, that's your choice. You're allowed to give up your freedoms. You're not allowed to take mine. And that to me was a big one. And I think that's part of what I'm running into right now in the United States is especially ever since like 2001, people are just willing to accept all this bullshit in the guise of safety and the government's protecting us. I don't care if it's the secret courts, the FISA courts, or whatever that are allowed to track us and everything we do on the internet. They're allowed to create profiles of every human being on the planet and all the information on them. That shouldn't be legal, man. That's not how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to have freedom to move and do things that people don't like because our founders recognize that in that freedom is how you grow and evolve properly. When you start putting down a bunch of restrictions and you become 1988 Soviet Union, and yes, I'm talking to the current government of the United States, specifically the intelligence organizations. I'm not big enough to think that you guys are actually watching me and my little 20 viewers. But if you do hear this, that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not constitutional. And I don't have respect for it. I really don't. Was I clear on what I was saying just now? My ADD kicks in. So I'm like, did I say like missing something?
And all I'm saying is, once upon a time, I found myself thinking, it's got to fall apart. Like this country's guaranteed to fall apart. But like, I just like this 4th of July is different for me. This 4th of July this year is way different than any other year where I've sat around and people have waxed poetic about the dudes in wigs who wrote this piece of paper.
Right.
Like,
the dudes in wigs.
This is very different.
Right.
This is a very different place that we're at now, and it still holds. Like, it still holds. Just because there's more people on the planet, just because there's less real estate to go around, just because there's no more frontiers to the point where Elon Musk is just jerking himself off thinking about reaching Mars. Just because there's no frontiers and there's too many people doesn't change the fact that this is a milestone. This is a milestone from the annals of history, from fucking Cyrus the Great to Zoroaster and Zoroastrian principles of progress and human liberty. From Persia to Cyrus to Babylon to the Magna Carta, all the way up to the Declaration of Independence. There's this idea. It's all at the end of the day, the human experience is, you know what? It's all yours to earn, and it's all yours to lose. And if it goes for you, it goes for everybody else. That's one principle. That's one overwhelmingly powerful idea. And I look at the American system, and I think, you need all this. You need all this weeping and gnashing of teeth. You need all this ado about seemingly nothing. You need this giant system. You need these institutions just to prop up the weight, the gravity of that idea. And if there's anything that I want to take away from this year's Independence Day, it's probably that.
And state it again for us. That you just said.
This idea of freedom. This idea of it's all yours to earn, it's all yours to lose. You and everyone else.
Move your finger on the mouse, please. Thanks.
You make it or break it.
Go ahead.
You make it or break it.
Yeah.
The weight of that idea of the individual person, the conscious individual, is who it all rests on, and we honor the individual first, that's that's the logical conclusion of the idea of freedom.
Yeah.
And we have this system, we have this country, we have these states, we have this enormous systematic apparatus because that's what it takes to hold the weight of that idea up.
Yeah. Or at
And
least we've been
now,
told that's what it takes, right? Because maybe they're just wasting some money. But go ahead.
and for me,
I get your point.
it's been an uphill hike from pessimism to you have to believe, you have like something has to change. We all have to do something different to where we can all look at this system. Yeah, no, we didn't choose to be born here. We didn't choose the families we live with. We didn't choose our progenitors. But God, at the end of the day, at least we have this.
Well, I agree, and I think for me, one thing that I want to take away from this July 4th is a recognition of other people's freedoms that maybe don't understand how this July 4th really was part of the foundation that allowed them to fight for their freedom. I recognize that July 4th, 1776 was freedom for white landowners. I think in most people's minds this is white freedom day in the United States. It's not Black Freedom Day because they weren't free on that day. And I get it. I understand it. I honor it totally. I don't think that takes away from what this day represents in the March of Freedom. I don't think that pretending that these documents are the oppressors. That's not the case. It's just the government behind it has been. These documents are written in ideals. They're not practical all the time. They're not always applied. We know that. Yeah. Would you go back, please? I don't remember. Yeah, thank you. When this, I call it poetic, when the Declaration of Independence is written, this is written on an ideal. This wasn't applied every time to all people in all cases. And even for white people, it wasn't applied in all cases, right? That's why we have a constant march of different court cases where people have come up and said, hey, this was unconstitutional, and we create new laws to enforce and make sure that our police uphold the Constitution. You may have heard of Terry versus Ohio. It's a Fifth Amendment thing, and it says, you know what, the police do have the right to stop you on suspicion, but they're not allowed to go through a full search just because they suspect you of something. For their safety, they're allowed to pat you to make sure you don't have any weapons, but they're not allowed to go in your pockets, right? That's because that ideal in the Fifth Amendment is pushed and moved back and forth. It's real easy for a cop to kick your ass and say that you were resisting arrest and you assaulted him, right? Before cameras, it was super easy. They could get away with anything they wanted to, and the truth is that power corrupts. Power corrupts. There's the old Stanford fucking thing about, the guards against the prisoners. These were just regular people, but because they were put in a position of power over the prisoners, they started to abuse them. Power corrupts. You need the protections. You can't just co-sign on everything the government does. That's what sheep do. And that's what a lot of people did during COVID, all over the world.
That's what Stockholm.
It was just like, the government said, I gotta take this because I'm gonna die.
That's Stockholm syndrome.
Man, it was bullshit. They just used everybody as guinea pigs, bro.
It's Stockholm syndrome.
Right? So, but at the end of the day, what you just said about it's up to us is true. We have to assert these rights. We have to assert the rights. Every time you let a cop get away with give me your ID without probable cause, you're giving up your rights. Every time you go to a company and you sign away your rights, you're giving up your rights. Every time you let the government say, oh, you have to do this behavior or that behavior or this behavior, you're giving up your rights. And what we're getting down to is at the end of the day, a lot of people just want what they want. They don't care how they get it, right? I see a lot of that. Even President Biden, he's talking about the vaccine mandate, and he's like, well, that's not going to be constitutional. And that motherfucker looked straight in the camera and was like, oh, there's ways to work around the Constitution. I'm sorry, that should have been an impeachable offense right there, because didn't you just take an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to uphold the Constitution? How many of our government people right now are not doing that? So anyway, to me, I want to get back to my point.
Pull the beam out of your own eye before you worry about the speck in your brother's.
There's that. But my point is this. Throughout history, we have fought for freedom. I don't care what color, what race, what sex, whatever. I don't care. There's been a continual march. And for thousands and thousands of years, the only way you could get any rights is if you can kick somebody else's ass. Period. If you couldn't, you're going to be their slave. It's prison rules, folks. It was prison rules. And in some places, it still is. Believe that. But this document specifically, the Declaration of Independence, and it's not that long. Like, go read it. What I read all that in like 4 minutes or some shit. Now, I could go on longer and look at the facts submitted to a candid world and all that, but you know that preamble, right? That beginning, those opening lines, they said it all. That these are inalienable rights. These aren't rights given to us by another person. This isn't rights given to us by some authority figure. This is the rights given to us by nature, by the very fact that we are alive.
And if you don't think this is universal, if you don't think there's something foundationally human about this idea of freedom, even the Buddha speaks to this.
Yeah.
Life is suffering. You don't get a choice about that. You get a choice what your response to suffering is.
Right.
I guess that's why this 4th of July feels so different now, is because with this, as it's been incremental, and I wasn't initially thinking about it, but as we got closer and closer to the 4th this year, I just found myself thinking about it a lot more. And it's like, after the last 3 years, what's our response?
Well, more and more people are just willing to suck it up. More and more, I mean, I promise you, like, more and more people are just like, yep, it's fine. This is the best thing, and I'm willing to give up all my rights for Uncle. It's not even Uncle Sam anymore. It's Daddy Sam. Like, the government has become everybody's daddy.
They'll endure every evil considered sufferable.
Yeah. But you know what? People suffered slavery for how many years and weren't fighting back. Like, people will suffer a lot before they fight back. There's a lot of economic slaves, miners in South America and Africa, and they're suffering horribly because of the threat that if they don't do the work, they're not going to be able to feed their families, or something bad's going to happen to their families. So, that, you know, I was thinking about that when we read it earlier. I'm like, there are people that are willing to, like, people will suffer a lot before they start fighting back.
Yeah, welcome to samsara.
Yeah, for sure.
Welcome to the embrace of suffering.
Right. Yeah. But it's how much are you willing? And some people will look at somebody like me and be like, "Oh, you're too rebellious. You want to buck the system. You always got some complaint or whatever." You know what? That's because I like my freedom. And honestly, I've got my freedom. I want freedom for everybody else. I want freedom for the future generations. I want people to have the benefits that I had of at least being free to participate or not to participate. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the choice that I had.
And I
And
think
and
that's one thing you and I have always had in common is we we've always felt we've always been obsessed. I think we've always I think you and I have never taken freedom for granted because we both know how to do with less.
yeah,
We're both comfortable with having less.
well, I signed my life on the dotted line, and I meant my oath when I took it when I said I will defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I meant it, Mr. Biden. I meant it, Mr. Police Officers. I meant it, Mr. Senators, and all you people that take that oath and just shit on it. I meant it. And I signed my life on the dotted line to say I'm willing to die for this. And you think, well, he's just a young kid that wanted college for money. I was just 18. Some little snot nose didn't know what he wanted. It doesn't matter. I still was willing to put my life on the line to defend it. And to watch other people shit all over it, it's so disrespectful to every veteran out there, bro. Every veteran out there. Every person that died in World War I, World War II, every person that's died in every war, black, white, or indifferent. And especially all of us that volunteered and signed our name on the dotted line and took that oath. Because that's the line that we were signing. We were signing that oath.
That's what was between you.
And so to go continue that, this declaration on July 4th that was signed, it isn't just white fucking Freedom Day. It is the continuation of March of Freedom for all humans. And to wrap it up, I want to go to the UN one, the Universal, because of the Declaration of Independence, at some point, when was this written?
10th of December, 1948.
1948. So, 1776, 200 and some odd years later, we finally get a document called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, drafted by the representatives of different legal and cultural backgrounds from all regions of the world. Translated in over 500 languages. Scroll down, please. The preamble, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members. Notice they use similar terminology. Of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, in the advent of the world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want, has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse, as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human right shall be protected by the rule of law. I'm not going to read this whole thing for you. My point in bringing it up is that our Declaration of Independence is the catalyst for a lot of the freedoms that people express in the world, including the freedom for you to have Pride Month and march around in flags and dress in whatever you want to do and not be harassed by the police. Now, did you have to fight for that? Sure, I get it. Back in the day at first, wasn't acceptable. That's the march to freedom. That's how it goes. That's how it went for black people. That's how it went for women. That's how it goes for any of it. That's how it went for white people. It's not just an overnight thing. You have to fight for it. And then once you have it, you have to hold it. And the way you hold it is by asserting your rights. And you don't let others step on them. And so.
You have to have the courage to be somebody.
Yeah. And hey, I mean, all you got to do is have the courage to think for yourself. Period. End of the day. That's your freedom. Your freedom to think for yourself. To not be influenced by Kardashians or Bidens or anybody else that wants to influence you to go their way. Because at the end of the day, all they want you to do is pad their pockets. All they want you to do is make them more free. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Black, white, gay, whatever. I don't care. Rainbow people all unite. I don't care. And LGBTQ, you need an S in there somewhere, because if you're going to be inclusive, you need to include my straight ass. Other than that, happy 4th of July, everybody. Dillion, thanks for another episode. Peace, deuces, love you.